A brief intro. Abby was a very successful businesswoman. Her companies, She Luxury Airs and Abby Food, were a household name around the country, with stores in all major cities within the country. She commanded so much authority in the hair industry. Abby was also very committed in her local church, and she gave out so much money towards the mission that despite her young age, she was made a deaconess, a very important office in the Christian faith. But beneath her lovable public personality, she was a high-ranking member of a very dangerous occultic sect, the Black Sisters. They were the biggest supplier of human organs in the black market, and she used her frozen food business as a camouflage to carry out her organ harvesting business. She was very happy since she was growing wealthier by the passing day, up until something happened. One afternoon, while Ada, her only child, was coming back from school, some of Abby's men, all well armed, intercepted her car. Just at a sharp turn, the driver of her car was lucky enough to escape, but Ada was not that lucky. There she was, crying and begging these hostile-looking men for mercy, but all her pleas fell on deaf ear. They pounced on her and whisked her away, back to the courtroom to meet the same fate others have suffered. They did not know that the child they just caught was their boss's only child. They soon arrived back at the courtroom. Abby had just stopped by to leave an instruction for her workers and see how things were going. She was just about leaving when she saw her men, who had just returned back from a raid, escorting one young girl through one of the back doors at the extreme of the courtroom. She knew what fate awaited that child. The face of the child was covered in a black shroud, and she could not tell who that child was. Something within her wanted to know who the child was. She wanted to order them to reveal the child identity to her. But then a call came in and she got distracted. And before she was through with the call, her men had already led the child indoor. Even though she needed to go for an important meeting immediately, she still had this lingering feeling to know who the child was. Well, at the end, she decided to pay a deaf ear to her instincts. She entered into her car and left. She was soon back at her office. Some important delegates were already there waiting for her. She apologized for coming late, and the meeting started. These delegates were from some big corporate bodies. They were discussing some important deals with her. Abby put her phone on silent mode to avoid any interruption and distraction. Meanwhile, back at the courtroom, a lot was happening. Ada, Abby's only child, has been secretly led into a hidden aperture within Abby's courtroom by Abby's men. She was tied to a wooden chair and her blindfolds taken off. For the very first time, she could now have a better view of her surroundings. The place was very dark, so she couldn't really see much of it, but from the little she could see, the place was like where animals are slaughtered. On a wooden table at the center of the room were some cutlasses and knives with deep cuts on the surface of the table and dry blood stains on the table, suggesting it has been used multiple times to slaughter animals. Ada looked beside her. She could see two other ladies, also bound with rope, seated on the ground. These ladies were much older than her. They were dressed in skimpy party wears and wearing bun straight hairs with jewelries on. These girls were looking very frightened and crying. These were the girls that had been kidnapped from a nightclub the previous night. Ada was confused and afraid. She was having this experience for the very first time, and she still could not make much sense of what was going on or why she had been taken there. At the other side of the room were some of Abby's men. They were smoking and drinking. They looked very relaxed and felt very much at home. After some time, the one who seems to be the leader of the gang ordered two of his men to bring one of the ladies beside Ada to him, and they obeyed. This young lady was completely stripped of her attires, and right in front of Ada and everyone in the room, the leader had his way with her, followed by the rest of the other men, who all took turns on her After this, the leader took a long knife and unalived the lady. And his men started dismembering her and harvesting her vital organs. All this happened right in front of Ada. She was terrified and petrified. Words could not properly describe the raging emotion washing through her. Her eyes were wide and full of tears. She had just seen something very terrible. Her heart was beating so fast, she felt like it might jump out of her chest. She wanted to scream, but it was clear to her by now that such action would be met with an instant hostile reaction from these men who had no regard for human life. Besides, she was just too shocked to utter a single word, and right in front of Ada and the other lady, the girl was completely dismembered and her body sorted out into containers and bags as usual. After this, the leader of the gang ordered for the second lady beside Ada to be brought before him, and just as he did with the first lady, the girl was undressed, and he and his men started having their way with her. One of the men stood aside and started sharpening a knife. By this time, Ada was crying profusely. Everything became clear to her. It's now dawned on her that after they were through with this lady, that she would be the next. Meanwhile, it was already about 3 hours since Evie left the co-room for the office. She was really busy all through the day, attending to important clients and speaking with some team of journalists who she had granted interview with. But then, when she was less busy, she took up her phone, and to her surprise, someone has been trying to reach her multiple times, but she was not aware since she put her phone on silent mode. Over 100 missed calls were on her phone. Abby was very surprised and confused, wondering who needed to speak with her so desperately that they left so much missed call on her phone. Anyway, she dialed one of the number that called her. Someone picked up the call from the other end. It was a male voice. This person introduced himself to Abby as an inspector of police from one of the police stations within the city. He told her she must come to the police station immediately, that her daughter was in trouble, and that her daughter driver was at the police station with them as he speak. After which, he dropped the call. Abby was very frightened. She ran out of the office into her car and zoomed off to the police station that has been described to her. All the while, she was hoping and praying that her only child should be okay. Even though the police had refused to tell her in details what exactly was wrong with her child, she could tell from the tone that it was something really serious. After driving for some time, Abby finally arrived at the police station. Outside of the police station, a small crowd of people were already gathered. They were looking very worried and talking with each other in low tones. These were some of the people who witnessed the kidnap of Abby's child earlier that afternoon. When they sighted Abby, they stopped talking while avoiding her gaze. Abby could tell that the conversation they were having was about her. She searched their faces to find any clue as to what was going on, but she just could not find any answer. One of the women among those gathered burst into tears while cleaning her eyes with the edge of her wrapper. At this point, Abby could not bear it any longer. She dashed inside the police station to see things for herself. What happened? Where is my daughter? She demanded. She scanned everywhere frantically, but Ada was nowhere in sight. Her driver was seated behind the counter. He was visibly shaking and crying profusely. Abby rushed to him and grabbed him by the collar. Where is my child? What did you do with my child? She demanded in a desperate tone mixed with anger and shock while shaking him furiously. The police around tried to calm her down. Soon the DPO invited Abby and the driver to his office. It was there the news of Ada kidnap was broken to her. She almost ran insane as the driver recounted how some hefty men armed to the tooth intercepted their car and how Ada was taken and how only him managed to escape being caught and miss a hair of bullets. She burst into tears, all the while wondering why such misfortune had befallen her. But then, in the midst of all these tears, it dawned on her that her only child may have been taken by her own men. The description the driver has given to the police matched the ruggedness of her men. Besides, that afternoon, some of her men had brought a child about the age of her daughter to the co-room. She threw both hands on her head as hot tears flowed down her face. She knew just how brutal her men could be. If truly her child was with these men, then she was in grave danger. She knew she must act very fast. Anyway, the DPO promised to investigate this issue and help rescue her daughter. She thanked the DPO and hurried out of the police station without uttering a single word to anyone. She knew exactly where to find her daughter, but clearly she can't reveal this information to the police. She rushed into her car and drove off into the gathering dust back to the co-room. She was frantically ringing the numbers of her men to inform them that the child they had brought in that afternoon was her only child. But to her horror, none of them were picking their calls. She was devastated and confused while praying to meet her daughter alive. It was already dark before she got to the co-room. By this time, all her workers had already closed for the day, and the whole place was locked up. She rushed through the back door and opened the door with her spare key. She rushed in to see what has become of her daughter. And true enough, just as she suspected, Ada was with her men. But the sight that greeted her eyes made her stop in her track. All her men were busy having their way with her little daughter. Ada, the little child, was very weak and barely responsive, as different of heavy men took turn on her. This was a horrifying sight for a mother to bear. Anyway, Abby's men soon noticed the presence of their boss, and they quickly stopped what they were doing. They could tell from the expression on her face that all was not well. She called the leader of the men into another room to speak with him privately. A minute later, he came back into the room. Ada and the rest of the men were in. He was looking so terrified and afraid. He immediately ordered Ada to be dressed and blindfolded once more, and she was immediately whisked out of the co-room that night. They drove for some time, and they later dropped her at the gate of a hospital, and their car zoomed off into the night. The security man at the hospital who saw what just happened promptly alerted the hospital management, and Ada was immediately rushed into the emergency ward of the hospital to receive immediate treatment. By this time, Ada has lost consciousness due to the ordeal she just passed through. The hospital promptly informed the police of what occurred, and the police called Abby to identify if the child at the hospital was her missing daughter. Abby broke down in tears as she saw the condition her daughter was in. There were bruises all over her body, and she has still not gained consciousness yet. Abby cried crocodile tears while refusing to be comforted. "What is my offense? Why are my enemy fighting me?" she muttered while crying profusely. The news of Ada kidnap had spread like wildfire. Since Abby was a public figure, the media was following the case closely, with all top blogs on social media and even news channel talking about it. But then, Abby made sure to hide the abuse her daughter suffered from the public. She only told newsmen that her competitions had kidnapped and beaten up her only daughter as a way of sending threats to her, and she sold this lie very well. "These people are really evil. They don't want me to serve the public with my cheaper products anymore. That is why they are targeting my family," she told the newsmen while wiping the tears from her eyes with a handkerchief. And this narrative quickly went viral. The public believed her and were on her side. They saw all the other companies selling her type of product as being evil and heartless cabal, and her competition felt the heat of this accusation. The public basically blacklisted all the other companies selling canned and frozen food, and they stopped buying from them altogether. And Abby was able to convince the senior doctor not to tell the police about the abuse her daughter had suffered in the hands of the men who adopted her. The reason she gave was that she don't want her family name to be tarnished, and the doctors agreed to help her. But what they did not know was that she was afraid that the police may get their hands on some forensic evidence to track her men with, and which may expose her. It has been 3 weeks since Ada's kidnap, and up until now, she was still in coma. And this got Abby very worried. But then, the doctors who had been running a series of tests on her and observing her critically 24/7 told Abby that there was still hope for Ada. She was showing gradual signs of improvement. Even though Abby was very worried because of her daughter's critical condition, something else was happening. Abby was becoming really popular and well known all over the country. The media was following Ada's story closely, and the public could not help but sympathize with Abby, who they felt was going through a lot because of them. And as a result, the sales of her canned and frozen food shoot through the roof. She was gaining so much visibility, and a lot of people were talking about her. And Abby actually capitalized on this newfound attention to promote herself even further. She granted several interviews to the media. In each of these interviews, she makes sure to accuse her competitions of the pains her family has been going through. And this interview made her even more popular, and the demand for her products started pouring in from different parts of the country. And this really made her happy. She knew this newfound visibility would help her expand her organ harvesting business even further. Anyway, after 4 weeks of intensive care at the hospital, Ada finally woke up. She had recovered from the coma. The news of her recovering invoked jubilation all over. Abby was particularly happy about her daughter recovering, but then something was giving Abby worries. The police were asking Ada some questions. CSP Okoro, who had been investigating the recent kidnapping in the past few years, felt that the kidnap of Ada could be related to those other kidnap cases. And if she could provide some information about the kidnappers, it would really help the police to track them down. And this really bothered Abby, but to her relief, Ada could not provide any meaningful information to the police. She had not fully recovered yet, and she still could not remember much of what happened that day. Anyway, CSP Okoro told Abby to alert the police if Ada could come up with more information, and of course, Abby promised to cooperate with the police. Little did they know that they were discussing with the kidnap kingpin they have been trying to track all this while. After Ada was discharged from the hospital, Abby promptly threw a big party. She went to her church for Thanksgiving and invited friends and well-wishers to rejoice with her. After the party, everyone went to their various homes, and everything kind of returned back to normal for everyone, but not for Ada. The memories of what happened that night were returning to her gradually. It was really gruesome. The killings and the brutal defilement she and the rescue ladies suffered. She knew a woman saved her that night from the hand of these terrible men. Even though she did not see her, she heard her angry voice while she was talking to the leader of the gang in another room, out of sight. The voice she heard that night sounded exactly like her mom's voice, but then it still could not make any sense to her. What her mother was doing among a den of killers that night. Her young mind could not properly process what was going on. She became even more confused. Meanwhile, her mother was still asking her questions. My daughter, do you still remember the faces of these men who captured you? If you see any of them, will you be able to recognize them? Do you know where you were taken to that day? Abel would ask her this and many other questions. Initially, Ada wanted to tell her mother details of everything that happened that night, but then something held her back. Even though she was still very young, just 10 years of age, she could tell her mother was hiding something away from her. What if the voice I heard that night was truly my mom? She thought to herself, and she decided to lie to her mother. She told her she could not remember much of what happened that night, and this made Abby really happy. Her mind was at rest. But then, as the time passed, the trauma of what Ada faced just could not go away. She was always having terrible dreams, and she would wake up in the middle of the night, crying and screaming, and this strange behavior from her daughter really bothered Abby. Sometimes she would be too scared and refuse to leave the house for school, and this condition got worse by the passing day. Even though Abby was growing wealthier by each passing day, she was becoming concerned for the well being of her child. She was afraid that her child may go insane if her condition persisted. And that was when she reached out to her family doctor to provide a solution to her child problem. After listening to her, the doctor told her to employ the service of a good therapist to help her daughter. And Abby agreed to get a therapist for Ada to help her through this trauma. And after doing some research, Dorcas came top of the list. She was a successful therapist with so many successful cases. It was this woman Abby paid to help her child out of the trauma she was facing. Twice a week, Auntie Dorcas visited Ada to talk to her. Initially, Ada was hesitant and reserved, but with time, she came to like Dorcas so much. She was a very nice woman who seems to have a genuine love for her and care for her well-being. Ada became more relaxed around her, and she soon found out that the more she talked with Dorcas, the more her trauma was going away. She was having lesser nightmares, and the feeling of fear that always gripped her whenever she was around strangers was also going away, and she became really happy. Even Abby was happy at some of the positive results she was seeing. Dorcas was still seeing Ada once in a while. Dorcas would take Ada for a walk to visit a park nearby to appreciate nature. It was on one of these visits that Ada decided to open up to Dorcas completely. She told her everything that happened that night, and for the first time she disclosed to her that she had heard her mother's angry voice scolding the men who had adopted her. That voice sounded very much like my mother, but I'm not very sure of this. The last thing I remember was the voice of this woman ordering the men to set me free immediately. I later woke up to see myself in the hospital. She disclosed to Dorcas with a worried look on her face. Dorcas was taken aback by the revelation Ada just made. For a while, she was silent, and after some time, she finally replied to her, "My daughter, I am so sorry for this terrible experience you had to face. Let me tell you my own story," she started. "I was once married and had a son, but one night a group of young men, all armed to the tooth, broke into our house and take my husband and son. I was only spared because my husband was fast enough to hide me away in the ceiling, but my son could not join me before they broke in. It has been 5 years now, and up till today, no one know if they are dead or alive. So I understand the pain you felt when you saw these ladies' lives being taken right before your eyes. Just imagine the pain their family will be feeling. We must find a way to stop whoever was behind your kidnap so that more lives won't be lost," she told her, tapping her gently on the shoulder. Ada nodded softly. She knew Auntie Dorcas was right, but the first step was to determine if truly Abby was involved in the kidnaps. And they both started crafting out plans to find out the truth. And after brainstorming for some time, Dorcas came up with an idea. She would spy on Abby's conversation and gathered evidence to prove if she was guilty or not. And the only way she could achieve this would be through Ada, her daughter. Dorcas promptly bought some recording device and secretly brought it along for her next meeting with Ada. When no eyes were on them, Dorcas gave this tiny recorder to Ada and taught her how to use it. Ada went into her mother's bedroom and hid this powerful recorder away under her bed to capture any sound coming from her room. And every week, whenever Dorcas came visiting Ada for the therapy session, they would play the recorder to fish for any phone calls. But initially, the recorder did not capture any form of phone conversation whatsoever. But just when they were about to wave off Ada's suspicion, the recorder picked up something that caught their attention. Hey, before we jump right back into our story, today massive hug goes to Catherine, watching from the UK, and Grace, watching from Port Harcourt, Nigeria. Thank you so much for your love and support. Where are you watching us from? Type it in the comment section so I can send you a hug in the next story. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Anita Chocolate and leave a like on this video. Alright, back to our story. What the recorder picked was a phone conversation of Abby. She was talking to someone on the phone. The content of what she was saying was very dark and gruesome. She was planning to unalive a little child and deliver his organs to one of her clients. A cold shiver ran down the spine of Ada as she heard her mother's conversation. It now became very clear to Ada that the voice she heard that night was her mother's voice, and she could not help but wonder how her mother could be this wicked. Ada and Auntie Dorcas knew they must act fast before yet another life could be taken by Abby and her gang. But then, Dorcas knew she was treading on troubled waters. Seeing someone as powerful and well connected as Abby would do anything to keep her dark side a secret, and she won't hesitate to take out anyone whom she suspects would expose her. And Dorcas started racking her brain as to the best step she must take. She knew any tiny mistake would be fatal. But then, as much as she thought, one person kept coming to her mind. She knew this was the only person who could be trusted. She was sure CSP Okoro, who had been investigating this mysterious kidnap case for years, would be very happy to help. Dorcas invited CSP Okoro to secretly meet with Ada on their next visit to the park. It was there Ada narrated everything that happened on that night of her kidnap to the police officer. She also gave him the audio record of the conversation her mother made in her bedroom. The evidence was just overwhelming. It became clear to the officer that Abby may be the one behind the cases of the missing people all this while. CSP Okoro rushed back to his investigation room to craft out the best plan to catch Abby and his men red-handed. He knew that the voice record of her that were with him won't be enough evidence to take someone as influential as Abby down. He must present concrete evidence before the court, and he racked his brain all through the night until he got an idea. In all this, he was very careful not to inform any of his men of the evidence that had just surfaced. He was sure some of his men may be tempted to sell this information in exchange for money, and the suspect would promptly clear all evidence. CSP Okoro took leave for work and started investigating Abby more closely. He secretly followed her around the city to understand her movements and her activities. And most especially, he was very interested in Abby Foods, the food company owned by Abby that supplied the general public with her frozen food and other canned products. Since the business was operating from a massive cold room, TSP Okoro spent most of his day secretly observing the activities going on at the busy cold room. And it was not long before he made a very important discovery. He noticed that Abby had two sets of workers working for her in her cold room. She had both day and night workers. During the day, the operation at the cold room was pretty normal. Customers trooped in to pick up their orders of frozen food, and several of her branded vehicles leave and enter the premises almost non-stop to meet up with the demands from eager customers. But then at night, something else was going on at the cold room. He discovered that some cars with tinted glasses will drive into the cold room and leave early the following morning before the regular workers would resume duty during the day. Even though Okoro knew a lot was going on at the cold room each night, he wanted to be very sure so as not to make any wrong move. And it was not long before something happened that cleared his doubts. One night, from his hideout, CSP Okoro saw a car drove into the cold room. About three hefty men, well armed to the tooth, came out of the car. They were dragging a young girl dressed in skimpy party attires along with them towards the cold room. Another car soon joined them, and more men joined them. The girl was helpless and begging for mercy, but all her pleas fell on deaf ear. CSP Okoro knew this girl was in grave danger and may not survive the night. He wanted to help rescue her, but he quickly refrained from doing that since he was greatly outnumbered, and such a rash action would only bring his life to a premature end. All the same, he managed to capture what happened that night on his phone camera without being detected by any of Abby's men. At this point, CSP Okoro knew he must act fast before more life would be taken. He had been secretly receiving other voice recording of AB through Ada, her daughter, and after studying this audio, he was able to determine an operation that would happen the following night. CSP Okoro acted very fast. He immediately mobilized his troop and they stormed Abi room the following night. They lay ambush for Abi's men that night. And sure enough, in the dead of the night, our men returned from one of their missions. They just captured a small boy, but today was not going to be business as usual, as they were quickly rounded up by CSP Okoro and his men, who were heavily armed and battle ready, and Abi's men quickly surrendered. CSP Okoro locked down the courtroom till the following morning to commence proper investigation of the property. In the meantime, Abi was quickly arrested and detained. The following day was a day no one in the country would forget in a hurry, as a thorough search of Abi's room revealed who she truly was. Her deep freezer were filled with human flesh, and medical scans were able to determine that she was also using human flesh in the production of her canned food, much to the horror of the public who have eaten her canned corned beef severally. Anyway, the evidence against Abi was just too overwhelming, and she confessed to her wrongdoing. She also mentioned the name of Queen Mother, Patricia, and the rest of the Black sisters, and CSP Okoro and his men quickly apprehended them before they could escape out of the country. Dickness Abi and the rest of the Black sisters were later arraigned before the court. Ada, her daughter, and all the survivors who Abi had stolen their kidney in time past all came to the courtroom to bear witness against her. The evidence against the Black sisters was just too overwhelming, and the judge found them all guilty of all charges leveled against them, and he sentenced them to death by hanging. And all their assets, running into billions of dollars, were seized by the government. And just like so, the Black sister reign of terror came to an end. Dorcas later adopted Ada to be her daughter, and they both traveled out of the country to the United Kingdom to start their life afresh. So yeah, bring this amazing story to a close. What did you learn from this story? Share it with us in the comment section. Thank you for watching today's episode from Anita Chocolate. Please don't forget to support my work by subscribing to this channel. Leave a like on this video and share it with your loved ones. Also turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to see our future videos. Also watch this other amazing story from our channel displaying on your screen while waiting for the next story. Bye.